What up, my crush? It's me, Fresh! Last time, if you remember, I ended up speaking about my top 10 Pokemon from Generation 4. Well, on to a new generation. The first region to be set outside of the islands of Japan, New York, or as I like to call it, the Unova region. This generation was questionable, to say the least. I mean, a Pokemon game without Pikachu? That's madness! On top of that, they tried to soft reboot the franchise. As in saying, okay, remember all the Pokemon we've talked about before? Forget about them. Here's the new roster. It was crazy, and as a result, there's a lot of Pokemon in this generation that are just copycats of Generation 1 Pokemon. So it feels a little less original. But despite all the copycats, there's still plenty of original Pokemon in here, and many of them are some of my absolute favorites. So many, in fact, that I'm extending this top 10 to a top 15. Well, we better get started. Here is my top 15 Pokemon of Generation 5. Number 15. Gigalith. Gigalith is meant to be a copycat of Golem from Generation 1, but honestly, there's enough differences between the two of them that I can safely say Gigalith is pretty original. In fact, I think I prefer Gigalith to Golem. I love the name and the shape of this guy, along with those striking colors. It looks tough, but it's not really that tough in battle. I don't often use pure rock types because they have a lot of weaknesses. More weaknesses than ice types. See, ice types aren't completely useless. Its name comes from Giga, the Greek word for giant, and Megalith. The compressed solar energy it stores in its core can be fired from its mouth as a ball of light to blow away things from a dump truck to a whole mountain. They can only fire energy when the sun comes out. Its power is so intense that it develops fissures across its form. They can be found on construction sites and mines, working alongside people in Caparajah. So I guess not completely useless then. Number 14. Sawsbuck. Like I've mentioned before, I like Pokemon with multiple looks and multiple options, and Sawsbuck is a prime example of it. In Pokemon Black and White, the seasons change in the game every now and again, and as a result, Sawsbuck changes its appearance too, probably based off the 4 stags of Yggdrasil, 4 deer from Norse mythology who eat the branches of the World Tree, creating the 4 seasons. Also, it's likely based off Per David's deer, a species of deer which decorates its antlers with plants and flowers to impress potential mates. And Sawsbuck takes this to the extreme. In summer, Sawsbuck's antlers are lush and green and leafy. In autumn, or fall, the leaves turn red and begin to sag. In winter, the leaves are gone, and it grows white fur to help trudge through the snow, and in spring, it sheds the fur and blossoms start budding in its antlers, and thus the process begins all over again. Personally, I like the winter form best. Its name is actually a pun. Summer, autumn, winter, spring. Saws, buck. Their ability Sap Sipper means they aren't affected by other grass-type attacks, and are healed by them instead. The only downsides to Sawsbuck is that not all the games have seasonal cycles, so Sawsbuck won't change. So if you want to catch a certain form of Sawsbuck, you'll need to look in a very specific area to find the one you're after. Another thing is, although its form changes, its typing does not. I think this could have made this Pokemon so much better. Maybe make the winter form an ice type, the summer one a pure grass type, the autumn one a ghost type, and the spring one a fairy type? I don't know. That could have made it stand out more. People used to tell seasons by observing Sawsbuck. Spring Sawsbuck that have many flowers grow slower due to the flowers absorbing its nutrients. Paler spring ones are considered more beautiful. Summer Sawsbuck with thicker antlers and leaves are considered more majestic. Summer one's leaves can be made into tea. The taste can vary every region. The darker autumn sawsbuck's leaves are, notes how stylish it is. Males fight constantly. Winter ones are easy to tame. This one is not very popular. Oh, you people have no taste. Number 13. Stoutland. Its name comes from stout and Newfoundland. Stoutland is based off a number of different dogs, ranging from Maltese, St. Bernards, and Yorkies. I love dogs, and this is a great one. Reminds me of my own dog, Oscar. Being pure normal type, it's only weak to fighting types. Not only does it have a fascinating design, but Stoutland recently has become more famous for having one of the saddest moments in the Pokemon anime, in which Litten's old mentor is a Stoutland. I won't dare say what happens, but let's just say it will still catch you off guard. And honestly, it's even sadder for me nowadays, considering what happens to Stoutland. However, because Stoutland is a pure normal type, there's a lot of other Pokemon I tend to use in battle. I just like it because of its design. A big, fluffy dog, of course I'm gonna love it. It rescues people stranded in blizzards or at sea. Its thick fur protects it from the cold. People could sleep in Stoutland's fur and be warm throughout an entire winter's night. It's very wise, brave, and good-natured. Ideal for rescue teams and household pets. It would never attack a human, so human parents trust it to babysit their children. Much better than most dogs in our world. Stoutland who live in Alola are uncomfortable with the extreme heat. Wild Stoutland learned to trust humans within 3 days. They enjoy living with humans. Proud of its mustache, the length of it determines its social standing. So, considering Stoutland in the anime, it's no wonder that his fur is some of the longest. Thank you, Stoutland. You have done well. Number 12. Archeops. Based on an Archaeopteryx and a Microraptor, it is believed to be the earliest known bird species of Pokemon. I love the colors and the idea of this guy. Based on one of the first bird-like species to appear on Earth, Archon of course isn't used to flying, because it literally couldn't fly. But as it evolved, it perfected its wings and learned how to fly. How poetic that it works in real life. They are smart enough to work together to catch their prey. It is said to be the ancestor of all flying types, but the muscles in its wings are still rather weak. They need a running start on the ground to take off for flight. It runs better than it can fly. It catches prey by running as fast as a car at 25 miles an hour. Then another would swoop in on it. Archeops' plumage is so delicate that professionals are unable to restore a fully grown one from a fossil. Whoa! This explains why you're given baby versions of all the fossil Pokemon instead of fully grown. Wow, the more you know. Number 11. Cinccino. Its name comes from chinchilla and chino scarf. Obviously based on chinchillas and high-class women's styles from the 1600s, Cinccino was meant to be a copycat of Wigglytuff and Clefable, as the cutesy Pokemon that evolved by a stone. Fun fact, back when I was a teenager, I was actually interested in getting a pet chinchilla. But it never really happened, so the closest thing I got was Cinccino. Cinccino is cute, but it's not much of an improvement over Minccino with that scarf. Furthermore, once again, its basic normal type doesn't make it that great in battle. I just like Cinccino because it's a pretty looking Pokemon, and it delivered. Its white fur is coated in a special smooth oil that deflects static, dust, and attacks. This oil is effective at treating people's skin conditions. Maybe that's why I love this Pokemon like I do. This oil is highly priced at markets. Its fur feels amazing, plus it can't stand getting covered by a single speck of dust. So if you want to truly beat this thing, just kick up some dirt and it'll run for the hills. Sorry. Number 10. Vanillux. I had to include a nice type from Gen 5 on here at some point. Its name comes from vanilla and deluxe. Gen 5 didn't really offer many interesting ice types to me. Cryogonal is a bit too bizarre, while Beartic looks a little basic. Vanillux and its line are just a little more interesting to me. I mean, they're living ice cream cones. Who doesn't love ice cream? They're delightfully goofy and are composed of both ice and snow. They swallow large amounts of water to make snow clouds to attack their foes with blizzards. If both their heads get angry, and in agreement, they bury everything in snow, whether they're friend or foe. Yikes. It can live with just one head if it loses one. But wait a minute. What happens to the lost head? Does it melt into water and die? Or does it form a vanillite? Well, who knows. It can create snow in any environment. It gets a lot of love from skiers and snowboarders. It was formed when two partially melted vanillish get stuck together. Well, that answers a question of how it can evolve, but we're all still thinking about that lost head, aren't we? God, that would be a frightening image. Let's hope that doesn't become a Pokemon in the future. Number 9. Serperior. Ooh, my starter Pokemon at number 9? Not good. The Gen 5 starter Pokemon are a bit underwhelming, and a little disappointing. There's not really much of a theme going on between these guys, and the starters were kind of the breaking point for a lot of people in the Pokemon franchise, especially with Tepig becoming Emboar. I mean, come on! This is the third fire-fighting type starter Pokemon in 3 generations, and it's the only starter Pokemon with 2 types in this generation. That is not good. Because of all that, I had to settle with Serperior as my favorite starter of this generation. Its name comes from serpent and superior. Based on a vine snake, it's a literal grass snake. Its evolution line is pretty cool. Starting off with Snivy, it mirrors the real-world evolution of snakes and how they lose their limbs as they evolved. Aside from that, it's still a basic grass type, and it doesn't really learn a lot of moves that aren't grass types themselves. So, compared to the other starters, I'm afraid Serperior is not as good. But it still brought me to victory against the Elite Four, so I guess that counts for something. It raises its head and uses its glaring eyes to make its opponents freeze up in battle. It soaks in the sun to boost its energy. They rarely go all out unless they face a powerful opponent, one not threatened by its glare. This gained them the name the Lord of the Forest. Hey, I'd respect that too. Just as long as it's nowhere near me. Number 8. Mandibuzz. Its name comes from Medill, Spanish for apron, and buzzard. Gen 5 gave us a lot of bird Pokemon. Mandibuzz stands out for a number of reasons. The fact that it looks like a vulture just makes it look so villainous. It even acts like a villain too. It eats bones and preys on Cubone. Good lord, as if that guy hasn't suffered enough. Being a flying and dark type makes it immune to both ground and psychic types. I even used one in Pokemon Sun and Moon. Its ability Overcoat makes it immune to sandstorms, powders, and spore attacks. So if I made enemies with a Mandibuzz, I would stand a no chance. Plus, only female Mandibuzz and Vullaby have ever been found. But wait, if only female Mandibuzz exist, how do they reproduce? The world may never know. Mandibuzz and Braviary are both version exclusives of each other, and while both of them look cool, I had to go with Mandibuzz because it stands out with its dark and flying type. unlike Braviary, who's yet another normal flying type. It builds its nest out of bones. It grabs prey and flies them away to its nest. They fly in circles before swooping to strike weakened Pokemon. They wear the bones of their prey in an effort to attract males? But no male Mandibuzz have ever been found! What are they doing it for? I don't understand. Their favorite food is Cubone. Good lord, do you have to rub it in? Although a ruffian, it adopts abandoned Vullaby and raises them like its own. They have fashion trends with bones, as different bones become popular at different times. Oh yeah, nothing like strutting your stuff with the latest bone trends. God, these guys are getting too dark for me. Let's move on to number 7, please. Number 7. Zebstrika. Its name comes from zebra and strike. This is a cool and fast-looking Pokemon. Obviously based on zebras, there's something so satisfying to make a fast flyer or running animal a fire or electric type, similar to the Flash. I love animals from Africa, and Zebstrika is definitely the first zebra Pokemon. I also love the fact that its white stripes light up yellow when it's charging its electrical attacks. They have lightning-like movements. The sound of thunder occurs when they run at full speed. Zebstrika can be short-tempered. When angry, it shoots lightning from its mane in all directions. Once a herd hears thunder, they chase the storm so their Blitzel babies can use lightning to charge up. Ah, responsible parents. That's what I like about you, Zebstrika. Number 6. Krookodile. Just look at this guy. This design screams, I am a bad guy who does bad things and I love it. Its name comes from crook and crocodile. Very similar to Hippowdon, it's a water-dwelling creature that now specializes to live in the ground. The red and black colors makes it really pop. It looks like a rock star, based on the West African crocodile, a species of crocodile which sometimes live in deserts, in caves and burrows. Ash's crocodile had a very peculiar journey in the anime, and it never wants to be parted from its special sunglasses. They're so important to Krookodile that they grow as it evolves? Ah! It's immune to electric and psychic types, so too bad, Alolan Raichu, you're never gonna hit it now. They never let their prey go. Their jaws are so powerful that they can crush a car. It can expand the focus of its eyes to see things over 30 miles away, like a pair of binoculars, even during sandstorms. What the heck? How far is that? That's like seeing all the way across Singapore from one end to the other. That is ridiculous. It's very violent, and it will clamp down on anything that it sees moving. It twists its body after biting something to tear it in half. It uses Flygon sandstorms to hide in waiting for prey. It can remain hidden for days, known as the Bully of the Sands. No kidding. Number 5. Chandelure. Oh, Chandelure, I long to use you every time a new game comes out. Its name comes from chandelier and lure. This Pokemon is surprisingly useful. And just look at it. It is so cute and yet so spooky at the same time. Based off a candelabra, those blue flames make it look boiling hot and otherworldly. Blue flames are way hotter than orange flames. Its fire and ghost type make it really tough and effective in battle. Its abilities Flash Fire Absorb Fire and increases its attack power, while Flame Body leaves its target with a burn. Either way, you're toast. I used Chandelure twice throughout my life, once in Pokemon Black and White, and in Sword and Shield. It became Gen 5's #1 Pokemon in 2020, and even became a fighter in Pokken. It absorbs spirits which it burns up in its flame, leaving the original body behind. These spirits lose their way and wander this world forever. So that's what Jacob Marley meant. He met a Chandelure. Its fire puts foes into a hypnotic trance. It haunts abandoned mansions. In homes that used Chandelure instead of lights, funerals were constant, or so it's said. Just pray you never see one out in the wild, because this is bound to happen. Number 4. Cofagrigus. From one ghost type to another, this guy is so freaky and yet so cool. Its name comes from sarcophagus and Aragrigus. Based on a cursed Egyptian coffin, it appeals to the young ancient Egyptian fan in me. Its 4 ghostly arms and that grin makes it one spooky ghost type. I used one on my Black and White team to throw off the competition. Its cry is also pretty cool, like a dubstep song. This Pokemon was also prevented from being traded online due to its name containing an offensive word. But I won't dare point out what that one is. Its ability, Mummy, truly is a curse. Any Pokemon that lands a critical hit on Cofagrigus changes the attacker's own ability to Mummy, nullifying all abilities and spreading it to anything that lands more critical hits on whoever has it. It is believed that they swallow those who get too close and turns them into mummies. In the anime, they just end up wrapped up in bandages, but real-world mummies are preserved corpses with no nose, brain, or organs. Yikes. They love to eat gold, and are even made of solid gold. So, does that mean they eat each other? They like scaring away grave robbers. Cofagrigus was once a dead, buried human, but forgot its previous existence. Ancient kings owned them. Okay, this is starting to get a bit too messed up, so let's change the subject. The Cofagrigus that I used in high school was very unique to me. Me and my friends came up with the infamous Drifblim Cofagrigus combo. I was terrible at online battling, and once me and my friend formed this duo of Drifblim and Cofagrigus, I finally was able to win a few online battles against my other friends. So thank you, Cofagrigus. You may be spooky, but you get the job done. Number 3. Darmanitan. Darmanitan is a great Pokemon to use in battle. If it has the ability Zen Mode, its form and types change to make battling it even more tricky. Its name comes from Darumidol and orangutan. I used a Fire-type Darmanitan in Pokemon Black and White, and an Ice-type Darmanitan in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Speaking of which, Galarian Darmanitan is insane. Based on Yetis, it becomes a pure Ice-type and Fire-Ice in Zen Mode. Just look at it! It's a flame-throwing snowman. That is both awesome and hilarious. It's also at this point in time the only Fire and Ice type. It also kind of looks like the Sultan from Aladdin. Its original Fire typing is based on the tradition of burning Darumidols after the new year. Normal Zen Mode is based on the 3 wise monkeys. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And in Zen Mode this is pretty obvious. Its eyes become blank, its mouth seals shut, and it covers its ears. Its internal fire burns at 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. As mentioned before, lava rarely soars higher than 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit, so Darmanitan is just hotter than that. It can destroy a dump truck in one punch. It turns into a stone statue when it's weak. In this state, it sharpens its mind and fights mentally with its psychic powers. On snowy days, Galarian Darmanitan come down to human settlements. It stores food in the snowball on its head for later. Gentle and strong, it freezes the ball on its head before headbutting. Its anger reignites its extinguished flame sac to form Galarian Zen mode. It spews fire everywhere as it rampages until it calms down and its body begins to melt. Oh god, when did Gen 5 Pokemon suddenly become so messed up? Surely the next one's a bit more wholesome, right? Number 2. Escavalier. Out of all the Pokemon I like to use in battle, Escavalier is one of my all-time favorites. This guy is probably one of my favorite Pokemon of all time, let alone Generation 5. Its name comes from escargot and cavalier. Just look at this design. He looks like a jousting knight. I love the colors and shapes. Their method of evolution is very unique. You need to trade a Carablast with a Shelmet to get them both to evolve. Based on Scaphanotus beetles, a species of beetle that eats snails and uses their shells as armor. And this is reflected in these Pokemon's evolutions. Carablast takes Shelmet's shell as it's being traded. This makes sense because Shelmet is the snail Pokemon. Once evolved, Shelmet becomes a Selgor, which becomes a speedy ninja without its shell, while Carablast dons Shelmet's shell and wears it as a suit of armor. Not only that, its surprise typing of Bug and Steel is one of the strongest type combinations in all of Pokemon. Bug-type Pokemon are some of the weakest in all of Pokemon, but when you combine that with the strongest Pokemon typing of Steel, that is a genius idea. That's the same sort of typing as Scizor and Durant. They're immune to poison, have 8 resistances, and their only proper weaknesses are fire types. This guy is so cool that I used him as a mascot in my old banner art for my YouTube channel. The only downside I have for Escavalier is, although its method of evolution is unique, it's pretty tricky when you think about it. Carablast only evolves by trading with a Shelmet. Plus, up till this point, you can only catch wild Escavalier in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Ah well, there's always a price for the toughest Pokemon out there. They fly around at high speed, striking with their spears. Even in trouble, they still bravely stand up to their opponents. It's very popular in the Galar region. A famous painting depicts an Escavalier fighting with a Sirfetch'd. How noble. Escavalier was very close to being my number 1 choice, but number 1 could only go to one other Pokemon. One who I favor higher than any other Pokemon I've talked about so far. But before we get to number 1, here are some honorable mentions. Garbodor, a design so bad I actually kinda love it. Klinklang, a fascinating pure steel type. Haxorus, a cool pseudo-legendary. Bouffalant, a buffed up Tauros from Generation 1. Yes. Braviary, could have been on this list if not for its poor typing. Heatmor and Durant, great Pokemon designs with unique typing, with Durant being a good substitute if you can't get an Escavalier. Druddigon, a cool looking dragon type with some fascinating abilities. However, with all that out of the way, it is with great honor to announce that my number 1 Pokemon of Gen 5 is... Ducklett. Behold, my all-time favorite Pokemon. Now I know what some of you are thinking. How can this tiny blue duck possibly be your favorite Pokemon? Well, for a number of reasons. Its name comes from duck and Signet. This guy is practically a mascot of mine for my channel. Long before the creation of Fresh Powder, all I had was Ducklett. I love ducks. I love the color blue, so seeing a blue duck Pokemon in-game was just perfect. Its plumage resembles a pool floaty. It's based on the story of the ugly duckling, who is ridiculed for how he looks, but ultimately grows up into a swan. This is also mirrored in its evolution. As for Swanna, it looks nice, but it's nowhere near as pleasing to me as Ducklett. The only downside I have for Ducklett is regarding the anime. There is not a single well-behaved Ducklett in the show. Like seriously, every single Ducklett in the anime is either stealing something, being mean to someone, or straight up spraying water in their face. It just makes me so mad. Why, Ducklett? Ducklett! Ducklett! Chocolate! Chocolate! Ducklett! Ducklett! Chocolate! Chocolate! I'm sorry. They are excellent divers. They swim around eating peat moss. When attacked, it uses its wings to splash water and to escape. They are better at swimming than flying. They fly better as they grow up. It watches its Swanna parents dance so it can learn how to use its wings as it grows up. The deeper it dives, the more strengthened its body is. Even though the anime has never given us a kind-hearted Ducklett, I can safely say that without a doubt, ranging from its design, its typing, and the impact it had on me as I grew up myself, not only does it deserve to be my all-time favorite Pokemon, I can definitively end this list off by saying that Ducklett is my number 1 Gen 5 Pokemon. Well folks, there you have it. My top 15 Pokemon of Generation 5. As of this moment, we are halfway to Generation 9, so, since we're at the halfway point, here's a quick rundown of my top 10 favorite Pokemon of the previous 5 generations. So, from Pokemon Generations 1 to 5, here we go. At number 10, we've got Walrein. Number 9, Blaziken. Number 8, Charizard. Number 7, Torterra. Number 6, Lapras. Number 5, Frostlass. Number 4, Girafarig. Number 3, Escavalier. Number 2, Politoed. And number 1, Ducklett. Whew, that was a lot, but there's still a lot more to go. Join me next time where I dive into Generation 6. Quite the improvement over Generation 5, and although there were only 70 new Pokemon introduced, this generation is full of surprises. So until next time, stay fresh, and thank you for watching.